think of us. And today I'm tuning in from Washington, D.C., where I work and live on the unceded land of the Acosta Nation. Today's programming will be opening up with a tribute to LGBTQIA plus young people in response to the recent targeting of trans young people. The tribute will be followed by remarks from the White House, the Office of the Surgeon General, and followed by a presentation by the Children's Bureau, our own Associate Commissioner Asia E. Schomburg of the Strategic Priorities of the Year. I am honored that you all have decided to join us today, and we are looking forward to being with you here.
Oh, say, can you see by dawn's early light was so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so carelessly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, home of the brave, home of the brave.
Hi, I'm Dante. I'm calling in from Murray, Kentucky. I am a transgender male, and today I'm reading Normal by Timothy Dennis. What is normal? Is it a feeling? Perhaps an emotion, whatever it is, I will never know. Is it a prescription? What aisle is it at the grocery store? Is it something I can even afford? Wherever would I find it? What does it smell like? Can you touch it? Perhaps it tastes good, but how would I know if I found it? What is normal? I was an LGBTQ youth in placements that were not accepting, and that's why I wrote this poem. Timothy Dennis.
That Child by Sheila May Somerville. The perfect foster child. Everyone wanted in their home, but no one wanted to nurture that foster child. Only good enough to show off, but not worthy of love and care from those trusted with her care. Fighting for full custody of her life, this foster child is shunned, shushed, ignored, and made a void. Wondering what the perfect foster child did so wrong. She just followed the image, the pedestal her foster parents and social workers had. Hidden when inconvenient, lifted up when vital. Tokenized for funding, penalized for truth speaking. May as well have been the same psychological warfare before care. Different rules, same fool. Learning to ride the ocean of the foster care system, surviving the same beach as what was home before care, just a different wave. The pedestal always within reach, but the strings have restrictions. The prize was freedom, the restriction was life. My name is MJ. I'm an androgynous woman from here in Denver, Colorado. There is about 30% of foster youth that identifies with the LGBTQIA+ community. I am a part of that 30%. I stand as a voice for those that do not have a voice. And as a voice for myself, that has long since been too quiet. And today, we have a message for the youth, and we have a message for everyone that's here to listen.
I am not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, fire away, 'cause today I won't let the streets in. We are bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. That's what we become. I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. Oh, we are glorious. The sharpest words wanna cut me down. I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. This is me. I'm gonna send the blood, gonna drown them. This is me.
I want to thank everyone who worked on that tribute, and thank the young people and the folks with lived experience who, participated in that tribute. If we can show them some love in the chat, feel free to send them a quick message of thanks for putting that together. To the virtual stage, I am going to introduce Nancy Negron from the Office of the Surgeon General. I'll have her introduce herself, and I'm excited to have her here as a guest today because, as you know, child welfare touches so many different parts of our lives. And so I'm excited to have the Office of the Surgeon General here. So Nancy, take it away, and looking forward to some of your opening remarks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm trying my very best to keep my laptop from shaking too much, guys. This is what travels. This happens when you travel and you're on the road a lot. But thank you so much for being here, for having me here. I'm Nancy Santiago with the Office of the Surgeon General. And I am, first of all, a big fan of some of the folks on this phone call today. So happy to be here. But I want to thank you all. I'm so happy and thankful for your leadership and for your support, not just of foster care youth, but of our young people. I'm standing by the LGBTQAI plus community. We all know the struggles that families are going through right now. We all know the struggles that individuals are going through right now with the open attacks and the messages of hate. I think I come to say, first of all, that you are loved, you are wanted, we are thankful you are here, and we want you to know that we're working in every way that we can to make sure that we're taking care not just of your mental health, but helping you take care of the mental health of other young people around us. I'm really thankful for each of you for being here. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the work that's happening in the Office of the Surgeon General and how the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, is highlighting the urgent need to address our nation's youth and the attacks that their mental health is under. And I would say that the mental health challenges in children and teenagers and young people and adults across the country are widespread, and they didn't start with the pandemic. We are right now in our office rolling out something that's called a youth mental health advisory. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the work of the Surgeon General, when the Surgeon General releases an advisory, it's reserved for the most important tool that we have to address the biggest public health challenges that the nation needs to address. So we use an advisory for very specific purposes and when there's an emergency that we need to pay attention to. The goal of the current advisory is to help call attention to the nation's pandemic and the impact the pandemic has had on our communities as a whole, but very specifically on the struggles that it's caused the mental health of America's young people and our families. And it's important to know, like I said before, these mental health challenges existed long before the pandemic. But it's important to know that the pandemic has made it significantly worse. And then add to it some of the personal attacks that folks are feeling because of who they are and who they're meant to be. And it's adding to the struggles that our families are seeing every day. I do want to make sure you understand that the COVID-19 pandemic added to the challenges that we are already facing in this country. Our young people were already struggling to address the profound mental health challenges and illnesses that they were feeling. If you really want to understand the depth of it, the rates of depression and feelings of helplessness and anxiety and thoughts of suicide had increased dramatically before we even entered the pandemic. If you think about the years of 2009 to 2019, the share of high school students who reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness went up by 40%. 1 in 3 students had these feelings before the pandemic. And suicidal behaviors amongst our high school students also increased in that decade before. We saw a 36% increase in a decade, with about 16% of young people having made a suicide plan the year before. That's a 44% increase. I want you guys to think about that. That means out of every 3 students you meet, one of them has had this feeling of hopelessness and sadness to the point that they've considered taking their own lives. Again, this was a crisis before the pandemic. But it's really important that we understand that the mental health of our young people will require an all of society approach to address the long-standing challenges, to strengthen the resilience of our young people, and to strengthen the support systems that those of us adults that love the young people that we're working with and the people in our families, we too need support to make sure you're going to be okay. I wanted to also offer for you the opportunity to check out our website, check out the Youth Mental Health Advisory, and know that we're going around the country now asking people for their help in many different ways. The philanthropic community, we're asking them for more investments in the things we know matter to young people. We're asking young people to take control of this narrative by openly talking about their mental health challenges. It is time for us to destigmatize mental health. Mental health is health. And the same way we talk about healthcare in this country, we're going to talk about what we need to do for you. So for our purposes, I want to make sure that you know that we are out there getting our message out to the public around how mental health is a health issue. We're out there talking about the supports that we need to provide young people everywhere we go We were in Texas a few weeks ago. In Texas, where the governor there has just made it a felony for parents to take care of their trans youth, we had a roundtable with young trans youth and their families. It is important for us to know that everywhere that we go, we're giving you an opportunity to talk to us directly. And we want you to know that we are rallying not just the administration, not just our community-based partners, but in every nook and cranny in every state that we go to, the families, the communities, the agencies, the investors, the philanthropy, the doctors, the nurses, and everyone in between to help us make sure that our young people feel an important part of everything that we do and that they understand that they are supported and they are loved. And most importantly, that you guys each have a purpose on this planet. And don't let anyone tell you you don't. The Office of the Surgeon General is here not just to support the mental health of our young people, but of the families that support them. Thank you to those on the call who are listening and that are doing the work. Thank you to understanding that it's going to take all of us, the all of society approach to get this done. And to the partners that are philanthropic partners on the line right now that are listening in, we will partner with you. Please call on us. We will do our very best to reach you where you are in your communities. And it is our job to make sure that we use this advisory on youth mental health to raise a flag of emergency so that nobody is left behind, no one is left out, and everybody understands that it is our role to make sure we protect and preserve the mental health of our young people and our communities. Thank you so much, Sixto, for including us.
No, thank you, Nancy. Thank you for the work that you are doing. And we look forward to seeing more federal agencies talking directly to young people with foster care experience. Thank you for tuning in and sharing a very important message today.
Thank you.
Bringing up next is Hannah Bristol. I'll let you introduce yourself all the way from the White House. Hannah, take it away.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sixto, and thank you, everyone, for having me here today, and for Nancy for that really powerful introduction. My name is Hannah Bristol. I use she, her pronouns. I work in the White House Office of Public Engagement, where I lead our youth and LGBTQ plus portfolios. And I know that this has been an especially difficult time for LGBTQ youth, especially trans youth across the country, and that 1 in 3 kids in care identify as LGBTQ plus. So we wanted to make sure that we took some time to really address LGBTQ plus youth on this call. And I wanted to specifically talk about the president's response to what's happening in Texas and the attacks on transgender youth in Texas, and read a statement that came out from the White House on March 2nd. So on March 2nd, the president put out a statement that said, "In recent days, elected leaders in Texas have launched a cynical and dangerous campaign targeting transgender children and their parents. The governor of Texas has directed state officials to open child abuse investigations into families simply because they have provided access to affirming care for their children. This is government overreach at its worst. Like so many anti-transgender attacks proliferating in states across the country, the governor's actions callously threaten to harm children and their families just to score political points. These actions are terrifying for many families in Texas and beyond, and they must stop." Today, the Department of Health and Human Services has announced several actions to keep transgender children in Texas and their families safe, putting the state of Texas on notice that their discriminatory actions put children's lives at risk. These announcements make clear that rather than weaponizing child protective services against loving families, child welfare agencies should instead expand access to gender-affirming care for transgender children. Respected medical organizations have said that access to gender-affirming care for transgender children can benefit mental health, lower suicide rates, and improve other health outcomes. Children, their parents, and their doctors should have the freedom to make medical decisions that are best for each young person without politicians getting in their way. In the United States of America, we respect the rights and dignity of all families. Transgender children bring fulfillment to their parents, joy to their friends, and are made in the image of God. Affirming a transgender child's identity is one of the best things a parent, teacher, or doctor can do to keep children from harm, and parents who love and affirm their children should be applauded and supported, not threatened, investigated, or stigmatized. As I told transgender Americans in my State of the Union yesterday evening, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Jill and I are standing with the incredibly brave transgender children, their parents, and families throughout Texas and around the country, and we will continue to fight for a future where all children can thrive. So in addition to this statement from the president on March 2nd, the administration has responded to anti-LGBTQ plus bills across the country, including in Florida today with the signing of Don't Say Gay, and other bills that we've seen. And we just wanted to make sure that we stated support for LGBTQ plus kids across the country. We're working every day to make sure that we are able to advocate for you all, to support you all. And I wanted to make sure that you all knew that we have your backs. I know that Transgender Day of Visibility is on Thursday. Stay tuned for more updates from the administration, but we love and support LGBTQ plus kids across the country, and we stand with you. The administration also is working hard to create more federal job opportunities for young people and to invest in young people in all parts of young people's lives, in housing, in healthcare, in education, in workforce development, in mental health, as Nancy detailed so well. And just making sure that we're setting young people up to be able to have the kinds of futures that we deserve, that we're setting young people up to be able to thrive. We're really proud to partner with the Children's Bureau. We're really proud to partner with across the government to make sure that we're advocating for young people and that we're able to advocate for the prosperity for young people as we think about what it looks like to build a better America. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Sixto. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for everyone who's on the call. And for all the LGBTQ plus youth out there, thank you for being yourselves and for doing what you do.
Well, Hannah, I have to say thank you for your words. Thank you for reading the president's statement and for always looking out for young people in foster care, young people who are part of the LGBTQIA community. And I also want to say thank you for running across the streets. Hannah was in one location. We couldn't get that location, the tech to work there. And it was so important to get this message to you that we found another location. So thank you for doing that, Hannah. It is greatly appreciated.
Well, thank you for helping me get on the call. So I'm really glad I could be here with you all.
There's mad love in the chat. Thank you everyone for participating in the chat. We do read these. We do send these on. So folks, feel free to put information in there. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce you to our Associate Commissioner at the Children's Bureau, Asia E. Schomburg, and for us to be able to share a few words with you and a quick presentation. Asia, want to introduce yourself, especially that we have some new young people here, some new youth boards who are joining in today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sixto. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Asia Schomburg. I'm the Associate Commissioner of the Children's Bureau. I'm calling in from Muncie, Lenape land today. I really appreciate you taking the time to participate in this event. I want to thank my colleagues, Hannah Bristol and Nancy Santiago, for their comments today. We've really felt in these past couple of weeks a feeling of wanting to really stand behind our LGBTQI plus children, youth, and families. And as Hannah did, particularly in advance of the Trans Day of Visibility. So happy that, we had Charnay and MJ and Dante to say a few words, and that we've kind of started this off with the inspiration that I think that we all need right now, particularly within what we're facing. So I want to say that to all of you, that we're fighting for you every day in this role at the federal government. You are all amazing humans. That is so true. You deserve safety and love, and you deserve to chart your life's course, which I will talk about in a few minutes. But I also wanted to say that the Children's Bureau released a blog that I wrote a few weeks ago, which I think someone put in the chat, so you can check it. But basically, that blog says that the Children's Bureau unequivocally and without reservation stands in support of all LGBTQI plus and gender non-conforming children and youth, especially those who are in foster care and those who have been adopted. I wanted to be clear when I wrote that blog about my language, so it's firm. You'll read it and you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. We stand strongly in support of all of you. We are in support of affirming medical care for LGBTQI children and youth, and including those who are transgender, gender nonconforming, and especially those to whom that care is denied. And finally, I want to speak directly to LGBTQI children and youth in foster care and to all the family members, child welfare professionals, and organizations who support and affirm them daily. Thank you for your strength, your authenticity, your courage, your hard work, particularly now as we see what's happening in Texas and some other states. It's really important that we stand strong and be in support of each other and be in community with each other. At this point, I love the chat. I love reading what's going on in the chat. And so if you have words or your own declarations of support that you want to put in the chat, I want to invite you to feel free to do that. I want to invite my colleagues to do that. I want to invite young people to do that, because it's important that we're able to read and see that we are not alone in this fight. So I would appreciate it if you would do that. Sixto, let's go to the presentation.
Yeah, and I'll give folks just a moment to go ahead and maybe we could even highlight some of the affirmations that were there. So for folks, just want to say thank you for doing that. And we're going to jump to the presentation.
So I think you can go to the next slide. So for all of you who haven't had a chance to be in a meeting with me or in a room with me, when I start talking about my vision, I wanted to share my vision with you all. A loving approach to helping children obtain what they need to live with dignity by comprehensively supporting families through a collaborative network of carefully selected resources and effective public and private investments grounded in community and culture, and a workforce fully devoted to serving with intentional equity. Someone asked me, why I felt like I wanted to talk about a loving approach. And the reason why I start out that way is because when I think about the work that I do, and I think about the reason why I get up and do this work every day, it's because I love the children, the youth, the families that we serve. And so I feel like we need to approach this work in a loving way. And so if there's nothing else that you get from this vision statement, think about how this work is done when you start with love and you end with love. Next slide, please. So I think I want to talk to you. I guess there are some of you who are new just to maybe what we're doing at the Children's Bureau. So I want to talk a little bit about what the Children's Bureau does and why we're here. Our main focus is to make sure that tribes and territories and states, which I will collectively refer to as jurisdictions, follow the federal child welfare laws and support families and children and youth in their homes, of course, and as a last resort in foster care or in kinship care. One of the most important things we do is to set the tone nationally and help to guide priorities in child welfare. So, for example, 3 things that are really important to me are equity, ensuring that young people age out of foster care have what they need, and supporting relatives who take care of the children in their family temporarily when they can't stay with their parents. So we're working on how to figure out how to give the jurisdictions the support that they need to do that more effectively. We're changing the law to get more money to relatives so that they can care for the children and their families, and so that they can be loved and cared for by someone who knows them and loves them. As I mentioned before, we're doing everything in our power to push back on the unjust laws that target our LGBTQIA+ children, youth, and families. We're helping jurisdictions think about racial equity and equity for underserved communities and how their systems create positive or negative outcomes for children, youth, and families. And finally, I believe in listening to understand. I have heard from young people who have experienced foster care, as well as the adults who love them. I've spent the last year listening, and now I'm going to use what everyone has told me toward progress. Let's go to the next slide. So these are Children's Bureau's 4 priority goals. The number 1, prevent children from coming into foster care, right? That's the main goal, is that you hope that you will never have to use foster care, that foster care would be a last and only temporary resort. And we have struggled with that, I think, for the entire life of foster care in the United States. But we're moving in the right direction, and we're investing more in prevention services, and keeping families together. Number 2, support for kinship caregivers, making sure that more kin are able to step up and be supportive to the children and their families, and that we are giving them the support, financial and other types of support that the kin families need. The third I love, which is called Ensure Youth Leave Care with Strengthened Relationships, Holistic Supports, and Opportunities. That goal was originally called something else. And young people, when I asked them about, my priorities, I wanted to share with them in advance and run it by them. And they said, this is what we need. We need strengthened relationships, holistic supports, and opportunities. So that's number 3. And then number 4, we need to invest in our child welfare professionals in the workforce. The workforce is in crisis, and we need to act, and it is urgent. Next slide, please. So this is the prevention. These are some of our objectives under the first goal, preventing young people from coming into foster care. First, I'm calling on jurisdictions to examine and amend their definition of neglect. What is the definition of neglect in your state? Read it and determine whether or not it actually conflates poverty with neglect. That's homework for you all. The second is we want to expand civil legal representation for families before foster care becomes necessary and to facilitate reunification. So what is civil legal representation? We know that sometimes families have housing insecurity. They may find themselves in housing court, landlord-tenant court, and but for housing instability, they would have never come into the the view of child welfare. And so what we want to do is provide legal representation, because we know that the outcomes for those who are represented in court is better than the outcomes for those who are not represented. And so we want to move in the direction of providing as much legal support, legal representation for families before a foster care becomes necessary. The third objective under this bucket is to strengthen our interagency partnerships for coordination and collaboration. I'll give an example. I have a strong partnership with my sister agency, HUD, a strong partnership with the Department of Education. We can't do prevention sort of in the vortex that is child welfare. We have to do prevention in coordination with other agencies that come in contact with the families. And then finally, our Family First Prevention Services Act, what we call Family First. We want to utilize the most expansive definition of candidacy. Without going into it, we want to make sure that we are putting as much money as we possibly can toward prevention services, toward keeping families together, toward addressing what a family needs before there's any reason to separate children from their parents. Next slide, please. Support for kinship caregivers. So here's what we're going to do. We want to promote equitable licensing standards for kinship caregivers. Right now, generally, in short, there's one licensing standard, but we want more flexibility for kin caregivers. We want to be able to say, in an emergency, rather than if a child has to be separated from their parents or taken from their home as a last resort, always as a last resort. But as the first step toward that, we need to go to kin, right? We need to find the family member who can take that child or children in and support those children. And so what do we have to do? We have to make it easier for kin to be licensed and approved, and we have to support kin families when a child is staying with them. So it's not just dropping the child off with auntie, but the child would be better with auntie because he knows auntie, because auntie loves him, because auntie knows the family, because auntie knows the community. But also now we have to help auntie with a financial support to make sure that she can fully take care of her niece or nephew. Next slide, please. Ensure youth leave care with strengthened relationships, holistic supports, and opportunities. Number one, we want to provide youth in foster care with safe, healthy, and normative experiences in foster care. And this is something that, I just hear from young people, like, especially in their teenage years when there are things that they want to do as teenagers and normally in high school, but the system makes it difficult. The system makes, approvals difficult, and what a foster parent can approve and what an agency can approve. And we need to do something about that. So I want you all, particularly my colleagues, to think about what we can do to create safe, healthy, and normative experiences. Of course, you heard me mention ensure youth have a successful transition into adulthood. This is something that I have struggled with in my career for many, many, many years. I feel like we've been talking about this for 20 years. How do we make sure that youth have a successful transition into adulthood? And how do we make sure that they have the support that they need, whether it's financial support, mental health support, housing support? So we have to do better, and we have to start thinking about that earlier than I think the field in general has been thinking about it. I also want to say, before I forget that, during the pandemic, we learned a lot about the types of support that young people need. And I think we knew a lot about it before the pandemic, but the pandemic sort of shone a light, a special sort of light on what young people need. And we talked about a cash assistance for young people, just giving them the cash to be able to do what they need to pay their bills, to be able to attend school online or whatever the case may be. And this is an important part. I want to sort of thank Representatives Danny Davis of Illinois and Jackie Walorski of Indiana, who really also fought for young people to get additional funding during the pandemic. Both of them and their teams were really critical in us being able to increase the amount of supports during the pandemic, but also learn what young people need in a post-pandemic world and how we can do better. And then finally, empower youth to chart their life's course after foster care. We want young people to, you all know what you need, you know what you want, you know where you want to go generally, and we need to support you in getting there. Next slide, please. Invest in the child welfare workforce. We have to invest in the professionals who are invested in all of you. And so we need to take care of our child welfare professionals as well. We need to create more pathways to recruit and retain and nurture our workforce. This has become also notable, particularly during the pandemic, when our professionals were on the ground. We were closed up. A lot of us were in our houses, home and safe, but our child welfare professionals and specialists also still had to be out there supporting our families and supporting our children. And so we need to show them that how important that role is, and we need to do it in a number of ways. So we need to partner with child welfare agencies to figure out innovative strategies how to support. I'm talking to a lot of regions, and I'm saying to them, don't only raise the problem, for example, of a high turnover or what people are terming the mass resignation that's coming out of the pandemic, but talk to me about what the workforce needs and how the federal government can be helpful. And we also want to encourage and expand educational and training opportunities that we think will recruit and retain child welfare professionals. And I want to make a note here as well that I'm thinking that, youth, young adults, parents with lived expertise who have been impacted not only by child welfare, but system impacted, are great for these types of roles generally. They understand what young people are going through. They understand the system. They know what mistakes we don't want to make again. And so I'm sort of arguing that we need to take a look at what the lived experience can bring to the profession. Next slide, please.
And those are all of our slides.
Oh, great! I was moving fast. Those are the priorities overall in a nutshell. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what others have to say. Please send me a note. But want to know, Sixto, if you have any questions.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with the first question. For folks who don't know, we see it in some folks have already known. I see some stuff that has been written up already, which is the president just released his budget for fiscal year 2023. And I want to ask you, what are some of the most exciting things in the budget? But before I ask you that, I just want to provide context to folks. So when the president puts out the budget, it's not the official law just yet, but it is a message to Congress. And so Congress still has to pass it. Congress still has to get behind it, but it is monumental. It is a part of the big function that happens. And so, Associate Commissioner, can you tell us about what are you most excited about what's in that budget?
There's a lot of exciting things in the budget, Sixto. I'll focus on the child welfare because that's my area of expertise. But there's just a lot of excellent proposals in the budget, particularly where children and families are concerned. Listen, the budget focuses on all the things that are really important to us: equity, fairness, and support for families. We are asking Congress to provide the authority and the funding to go up against or prevent discrimination against our LGBTQ plus families. We are asking for the funding to support kinship caregivers. As I just explained, we're asking for funding for more prevention services. The prevention services and programs are really critical to making sure that families are supported together in the home, right? And so, and there are lots of different ones, and not every family is the same. So we need more prevention services that are able to address the particular needs of any particular family. So that's really, really important. And of course, we're also asking for more funding for Chafee to be able to support our young people, and we're asking for more flexibility in terms of who meets the category for Chafee funds. So those are the 4 overall in child welfare, but there are also some other exciting things in the budget regarding mental health transformation and childcare and Head Start. And so we're really excited about what's on the horizon.
Well, I'm very excited about what's proposed in the budget. I'm looking forward to doing the work with so many people on the line today, because we are going to have to get behind this. We're going to have to call folks on the Hill. We're going to have to mobilize to support some of these initiatives. I was glad to see that Chafee was increased in the proposal. Increased there's $100 million. I'm glad to see increased funding for Ken. I was glad to see a bucket of money being set aside, hopefully here, if this gets passed, around creating more equity in child welfare. So we're super excited about the direction that this is going. I want to get to the second question here. So what are your priorities to make sure that youth exit foster care with strong, permanent relationships?
So this, in some ways, it's easy because if you listen to what young people have to say, and I've had many, many conversations with young people. It's actually was one of my favorite things to do. And when I say, what do you need to exit foster care successfully? It's really one of the first things they say is around strong relationships. But what they also say is, don't pick the relationships for me. And for some, adoption is the answer. And for some young people, adoption is not necessarily the answer for them. They want to maintain connections to their families of origin. They would like to identify their own circle of support that they would go to upon aging out of foster care. So I think the plea really is for caseworkers. It's like, listen to me when I say, maybe my permanent relationship isn't one person. Maybe it's 3 people, or maybe it's 5 people, and maybe each of those people I go to for a different reason. But this is my circle of support, and these are the people that I need to engage with as I'm transitioning into adulthood. So I think that would be like the number one thing is like, let's listen and let's figure out how we do things differently so that young people can identify their own circles as we help them to successfully transition into adulthood.
Thank you for that. The last question I'll ask here are, what can states do right now to further equity for children and families?
This is something that I talk a lot about the president's executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. If you haven't read that executive order, I would encourage you to Google it. If you put executive order on advancing racial equity, it should come up. But and we're doing it at the federal government. We are using a race equity impact tool and other tools to look at our own policies, to look at gaps, to look at disparities in outcomes for the families and children that we serve, and to really say to ourselves, here's where we see inequity. Here's where we see, for example, disproportionate number of Black children entering into foster care, and let's dig into the reasons why. Or do we have a diverse group of people making this decision at the agency? We're about to make this policy change. Who's going to be impacted and why? So I think it's really, and sometimes it's a hard look, but bring other people into the conversation. For some of us, we have a great team, internally, and sometimes you need to go externally and say, help us do this work. We want to get this done. We want to be a more equitable space, but we need help. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, but also don't be afraid to ask the difficult questions of yourself and of your agency about how to create more equitable outcomes for children and families.
Well, Associate Commissioner, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We find it very important to talk directly from the federal ecosystem to people with lived experience who are doing the work every day, whether they're advocating, participating in research, or running a youth board. And so many child welfare directors have joined us today. So thank you for joining today, and the staff and the and advocates and the community to be able to show up today. Any parting words before we wrap up here?
No, I just, just go forth, be strong. I'm actually drinking from
I was
my.
just about to ask you what was on your cup.
I think this is the message here. My mug says, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." It's an Audre Lorde quote. So for those of you who don't know Audre Lorde, you can look her up. But I think you should be deliberate and unafraid and move forward.
So you heard it here, young people, all the advocates, folks working in the states. We're going to be deliberate, and we will go ahead and move forward. Thank you all for tuning in. We will follow up with more information. There were some links that were mentioned here, and we will go ahead and make sure that you have that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye-bye.